You mentioned Frank Reich. This guy's such a class act. I mean, the national media just swarmed here in Indianapolis, more so you would have thought we were going to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's been just crazy madness with the national media. And so the media availability to Frank Reich this week was a little bit different, to say the least. And he held his own, and he basically just said, we respect his decision. I'm not going to second guess it. We let you know we're moving on. Our focus is on San Diego now. I mean, not L.A. Chargers. You know what I mean? Our focus is there, and I don't have anything else to say on the subject. But they tried to get him to crack. Riggin, what are your thoughts, real quickly? We got about 15 minutes to get through these NFL stories, but go ahead, Rick. What are your thoughts? Any more thoughts on Andrew Luck?
Well, I just mentioned on the show earlier that even if Jacoby is just average, I still think the Colts are good enough and they'll be just fine. They could be a wild card team. They could even still win the division because I think they built a pretty good team around Andrew. They have good pieces. If Jacoby is just average, I think they're still going to be okay.
I think we'll be happy just getting into the playoffs in lieu of everything that's happened. Mo, let's get into the breaking story. We broke it on the show, or we didn't actually break it. It was already broken. But, hey, we were one of the many people that re-broke it. Earlier on the show, the Buffalo Bills released superstar LaShawn McCoy. I know he's been riddled with injuries, and he's kind of old for a running back. And I happen to have Derek Schultz on the show, and we were talking about Andrew Luck when this came through. But, I mean, I know we like Marlon Mack, and I know I don't want to play the homer card all day long, but LaShawn McCoy's out there. Somebody's going to pick him up. Big story, big breaking news. This week, the big breaking news is the Bills released LaShawn McCoy. What are your thoughts, Mo?
Well, I mean, of course, I'm sure Colts fans would love to have LaShawn McCoy. Again, he's been often injured these past few years, a few off-the-field problems here and there. But, I mean, at this point, talking about the Colts, you have to decide if you're Chris Ballard, are you certain that Jacoby Brissett's a quarterback that can take you to the Super Bowl? If not, I don't think just getting in the playoffs is good enough. I think you have to decide, what you want to do at this position. The windows for teams that are Super Bowl caliber ready are so short in the NFL. We saw how quickly that window closed for the Seahawks. The only team that seems to defy that are the New England Patriots. But I think you have to decide, are you going to be a Super Bowl team with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback? And if so, then, a guy like LaShawn McCoy helps. If not, I think if you're Chris Ballard, and, I had thought this last week and tweeted it when it first happened, if I'm Chris Ballard, John Gruden made it pretty clear last year that he wasn't comfortable going with Derek Carr as they moved to Vegas. I think if you're a Super Bowl caliber team, you think you're that quarterback away, that you've got to look at bringing in a top-of-the-line quarterback that you could trade for. LaShawn McCoy's a nice piece, but if Jacoby Brissett's not that guy who you think can win a Super Bowl, then you've got other problems other than just LaShawn McCoy. Obviously, a team's going to pick him up, and I think you're going to see him try to sign with a team that's a contender. There's some teams out there that are very good that can always use a running back that can catch the ball in the backfield like he can. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes and what happens. But if I'm the Colts, I'm trying to figure out what we are at this point without Andrew Luck.
Ed, let's go to you. I mean, big story, big breaking news. Certainly not on the caliber of Andrew Luck, and we don't want to swing on that. We've regurgitated that all week long. But my mind first goes to Dallas. What are your thoughts with the issues that they're having with Elliott and everything else? Even though he's an older running back, you think that Dallas gives LaShawn McCoy a look?
Well, that would be, Jerry Jones giving the big middle finger right there to Zeke Elliott if he brought in LaShawn McCoy. I mean, I'm not even sure that relationship.
Isn't that what Elliott's doing? Isn't that what Elliott's doing to the Cowboys, though?
Well, look, I mean, you can say what you want about contracts. It's a two-way street. Owners will try to get players to give back money once they get hurt, and they'll cut them without any regard to injury. They'll reach a settlement, and Zeke's holding out because he wants more money. And I'm a big honor the contract guy, but it is a two-way street. But Zeke should be in camp, but he's a running back. He knows the shelf life of running backs. He wants to get what he can while he can get it. But I don't know. I'd be surprised if Jerry Jones brought in McCoy. I know in Philly, of course, it's huge news because McCoy made his bones here in Philadelphia second-round draft pick. Like I mentioned earlier, he's the all-time leading rusher in Eagles history. The Eagles tried to trade for him, or at least inquired about trying to trade for him back in 2017 and last year when their running back situation was just abysmal. Now they've upgraded it with Jordan Howard, getting him from the Bears. They drafted Miles Sanders. Darren Sproles looks like he's going to be healthy. We'll see how long that lasts. But, right now they're in good shape at the running back position, and I don't see the Eagles bringing Shady back into town. I think the most sensible team is probably the Houston Texans. They need a running back to kind of step in. I know they got Duke Johnson from the Cleveland Browns, and, we'll see what he can do. But, Shady might be a good backup, or he could be the number one guy down in Houston. So I know his goal is to reach 12,000 career yards. I think he needs about 1,400 more yards to do that. That's probably not going to happen this year, so he's probably going to be looking for a contract that's at least 2 years, if not longer. He's 31 years old. But, guys that have rushed for 12,000 or more yards, there have been 16 of them in the NFL. Every one of them except one is in the Hall of Fame, and that person, I believe, is Edgerrin James, who's probably going to get into the Hall of Fame at some point. So, that's his goal, is to get 12,000 yards. He thinks that will seal up a Hall of Fame nomination for him. I just don't think that there's going to be a team, unless it's the Houston Texans or some other desperate team that needs a running back. I don't think the Colts are one that is going to give him a 2-year deal, and it's going to be about the money and how much he's willing to take because, I think the Bills were scheduled to pay him over $6 million this year. He is in decline. Numbers were down last year. He's had a little bit of injury history. And like I said, he's 31. How many more years does he have left that he can be productive? So it's interesting. He'll get a job somewhere. I don't think it'll be in Philly or Indianapolis.
Well, NewJersey.com, NJ.com, I haven't read the story, but tweeted about the Bills releasing or expected to release LaShawn McCoy. Is it time for a reunion? So maybe they're trying to stir the pot there in a Philly market to bring him back. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens, guys. Let's get to our individual teams, and we'll start with you, Mo. The Cleveland Browns. Are we ready to get this Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham show on the road?
Well, I would tell you from a bunch of Cleveland fans on the show this morning that they're beyond ready. They're trying to let their appetite for the Browns, be cured a little bit today by the Ohio State Buckeyes playing at noon. But I'll tell you, there's so much hype for this team that it really does worry me, about a first or second game letdown with this football team because let's be honest, even though they practice together, there's not a bunch of game timing between Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham. And, this offense is ready to go. But I'll tell you, man, this defense looks really tough, too, with Olivier Vernon, who they got from the Giants, and Myles Garrett, and you factor in the secondary with rookie Greedy Williams. It's a team that everybody's going to look at the offense a lot, but I think this defense could be what really makes this football team this year. A lot of expectations. A lot of these guys and coaches aren't used to it. Freddie Kitchens, first-year head coach. But the expectations there, and they're going to be a fun team to watch, win or lose, because there's a lot of combustible elements on this team. So win or lose is going to be a fun team to follow all year.
Rick, we're going to let you chime in real quick on your Detroit Lions before we get to the Eagles.
All right. That's my Lions talk. Next.
Oh boy! You don't want to talk about Patricia or anything like that.
He looks like the guy that will order the turf and turf.
Guys, we're full of breaking news today. It's not as big as Luck retiring, but the Colts announced that they've traded Evan Bowen to the Dolphins for a draft pick. We'll see what happens with that. Ed Kracz, beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles. Ed, I know you said September 1st. It's August 31st. Can you be part of the breaking news cycle here on the Balance today?
I'll have to get back to you next week on that. Maybe I'll shoot you
getting under the pressure there. It's cool. We'll get you. We'll just make sure that when you break it, you include us in the @tweet. That's all we ask for. The Philadelphia Eagles obviously triumphed in your last preseason game against the Jets, ready to go against the Redskins. what a better team to start your season off against with the Washington Redskins. What are your thoughts, Ed?
Yeah, I guess the Redskins aren't getting a lot of love nationally. But I like some components of that team. I don't think it's going to be enough to win the opener, but I do think that, you know, the preseason for the Eagles to me was just one gigantic waste of time. Really, it was so boring. They didn't do much. They didn't play anybody. Probably the biggest news that came out of it was when Nate Sudfeld broke his wrist and they brought in Josh McCown to be the backup quarterback. But other than that, Wentz didn't play. I think Deshaun Jackson was in there for maybe 8 snaps, in 4 games. I mean, it's just a gigantic waste of time. So, that said, the Eagles could be, maybe a little rusty, maybe a little slow to start, that game against the Redskins. And I know a lot of teams didn't really show much in the preseason, but, I could see the Eagles kind of, feeling their way along and keeping the Redskins in that game, because even Case Keenum, who's going to start that game, at least he got some snaps. I think he probably was in for about 70 snaps this preseason. So, he was able to shake off some of that rust. You look at Carson Wentz, he hasn't played since December 9th of last year and hasn't taken a hit because they don't hit the quarterbacks in camp. And, we're going to see how quickly he's able to kind of reacclimate himself to the speed of a live game again, and how he's going to work with some of these new weapons that the Eagles brought in. I know doing it in camp, during practice, and even when the Ravens were here for joint practices, kind of doing it in game-like situations, it's not the same, when an actual game begins. So I think the Redskins can hang with the Eagles. I think it's an 8.5-point line at this point. The Eagles are favored, but I can see the Redskins hanging. They've always played the Eagles tough in the past, regardless of what they've had. I know that last year the Eagles shut them out, I think 24-0 in the season finale, which helped them get into the playoffs after the Vikings went belly up, to the Bears in that final game. That helped the Eagles get in. But the Redskins usually play them tough. Case Keenum's coming here for the first time since that NFC Championship game when the Vikings just got destroyed. 38-7. Game was basically over at halftime, and I know he's going to, try to have a little redemption if he can, but I just don't know if the Redskins have enough. I love their defensive line. I think it could be one of the best in football. And the Eagles' offensive line is a veteran group, but again, that offensive line has maybe played half a quarter together. So how cohesive will they be? Again, it's a veteran group that hasn't changed much, so you think that, maybe they'll be able to play well right out of the chute, but you don't know for sure how long it's going to take them to adjust to to an actual game. So, I think the Eagles will win the game, but I think it's going to be, closer than people think. I'm not even sure. I'm not really a betting man, but I'm not sure if I had the opportunity, I would take that 8.5-point line. I don't think I would take the Eagles to cover that. I think the Redskins will play them close. It'll be tight, but I think the Eagles will have enough to win, just because I think their roster is better.
Mo, today's the big day, if you will. This is the day where players around the bubble are afraid to come to the locker room. This is the day where maybe their iPads get locked. There's a lot of scenarios that are going through guys that are on the bubble. Now, don't get me wrong. Being on a practice squad still pays you $100,000 a year, and that's more than most Ivy League students get in their first year out of college. The average is around $60,000. So if you're stuck on a practice squad, making $130,000 a year, not the end of the world, but they got to get down to the 53-man roster. Let's talk about the Browns and the NFL across the board. What are they going through today? And if you're on the bubble, how big are you sweating it?
Well, I mean, I think you're sweating it, but I think if you realize that week one, tends to bring a lot of injuries too. So, there's some guys that are going to be moving on to other teams probably in the next 48 hours. But, some of these guys who were, real close to making the team probably won't be on the street very long, because we always see week one bring a good number of significant injuries. So, I think it sucks getting cut from a team, but I think, for some guys, it always provides them sometimes with a better opportunity. So, I think you got a little bit of bubble guts today. I think, come, the next 48 hours to 2 weeks, you could be back playing football again.
Well, we've come down to the end of the rope. Mo, where can people find your work and your masterpiece of Surrey?
Well, I've yet to have any of those yet this week, so I would say just check out my Twitter @MoRadio Show.
Okay, buddy. We'll chat with you soon. Thanks so much for jumping on with us and helping us regurgitate luck. I promise you we're done with it after today.
Well, now I can finish taking my generous.